Let me start the record. Okay, a very good morning to all of you. Uh, we have had the discussion earlier regarding this poem, the sonnet, which is part of Astrophel and Stella by Sir Philip Sidney. We have studied the earlier part. So the look at this particular picture now. You can be. I think the screen is visible to you. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So this is the screen. I mean, this is the picture with which we need to understand this poem. With the help of this picture, we will be able to understand this poem proper. It is an evening time or night time, late night time, and the speaker of the poem is addressing this poem to the moon. Moon is there in the sky. There are clouds in the sky. Trees are there. Bank of the river is there. Okay, there is a house. There are 2 to 3 people standing on the bank of the river, and there is one horse. Okay, you can see. Okay, there is a somewhat blur kind of image, but it is quite visible one also. So Sir Philip Sidney was born in 1554, died in 1586, as I said earlier. A most important literary figure of the Elizabethan age, who is the writer of Astrophel and Stella. There are 108 sonnets and 11 songs, which make this particular sonnet sequence, Astrophel and Stella. This is the picture of Sir Philip Sidney. Okay, you can see it outrightly. So this sonnet is also known as sonnet number 31 from Astrophel and Stella. This sonnet is also known as sonnet to the moon, or it is also known by its very first line of the poem, with how sad steps o moon thou climbs the skies. Very important poem, and one important aspect of this poem is uh, Sydney is the first, you may say, the sonneteer to write English sonnets. These sonnet forms were, or this sonnet form was introduced into English poetry by Sir Thomas Watt and Henry Howard or Lapsary, as I already told you. But these people, those poets, only translated the poems by Petrarch, the Italian sonneteer. They did not write sonnets on their own. Okay, but they just used iambic pentameter and they translated the Italian version of Petrarchan sonnets into English poetry. That is what their contribution is. This is how they introduced English sonnet to the sonnet, okay, to English, okay, in English literature. But Sydney's is a maiden attempt in English poetry, in English sonnet writing. For the first time, who Sydney started writing sonnets into English poetry originally. Okay, that is what his basic contribution to English poetry is, or Elizabethan poetry is in particular. So Sydney did not deviate away from the Petrarchan tradition. He used the Petrarchan form as it is. As I said earlier, Petrarchan sonnets are divided into two parts: octave and sestet. Octave means 8-line stanza, sestet means 6-line stanza. So in the same way, this poem also, we could see the octave and it is followed by sestet. And as usual, the rhyme scheme also is almost one and the same, which was introduced, by Sir Thomas Watt and Henry Howard or Lapsary, in their poetry. So this is what the brief introduction already we have, started with. So this, as far as the theme of this poem is concerned, it follows also the Petrarchan tradition too. The speaker of the poem expresses his unrequited love. Okay, that is the theme of these all sonnets and all 11 songs in Astrophel and Stella. The speaker is expressing his love, to a lady who is a reluctant one, who does not change her mindset. She is also described as a cruel lady, as we have studied already in Spenser and sonnet earlier, that we have studied already. So unrequited love refers to non-reciprocal. In a sense, the speaker does not receive any positive response from the beloved, but speaker does not give up loving his beloved. Okay, this is what the basic theme of Petrarchan tradition, that is also known as courtly love tradition. Okay, that already I have discussed at a wider length. Let us see the poem proper now. Can you hear me properly, Sonali Ashwini?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and now you can see the screen also. The poem is there on the screen. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbs the skies, how silently and with how wan a face. First couplet, what may it be that even in the heavenly place that busy archer his sharp arrow strikes. Now this there is a clear reference, okay, to the one Greek god called Cupid. Now Cupid is actually the god of love in Greek mythology. Okay, and this particular god. So let us first understand the first line of the poem. The poem is, as I said earlier, this poem is addressed to the moon, who is actually okay at night. Okay, during night time there is a starry sky, and okay, when the speaker looks at the sun, the speaker feels that the moon appears to be very sorrowful. Okay, sun appears to be very, I mean, sorry, moon appears to be very sorrowful, and therefore it is taking very sad steps. Look at the uses of the words in the very first line. How sad steps? When you take sad steps, when you are unhappy, when you are sad. So sad steps. Oh moon. Again, okay, as I said earlier, this poem personifies the moon. Moon is not an animate object, it is an inanimate, okay, object, or it is non-human being. But the speaker is addressing this poem to the moon, who is described as an animate object or as a human being. So that is called as personification. The poem, in the poem, the speaker personifies, or the poet personifies the moon as if a human being. It is also known as pathetic fallacy, that we will explain at the end part of the poem. Okay, how human emotions or how human qualities are assigned to the non-human beings. Okay, so by that way you should understand, okay, this poem. How silently and with how wan a face. So how silently and how wan. Okay, these two words. Okay, every okay, in the last second line of the poem, the poet deliberately uses these, okay, two, okay, words, I mean repetitively. How sad, sorry, how silently and with how wan a face, how seriously face, and how a silent face. So all these adjectives here refer to the sad feelings, okay, of the moon. The moon appears to be very sad, okay, for the poet. Okay, and therefore the speaker feels that moon is also sorrowful. Moon may be suffering from the love sickness. And okay, that the Cupid I just have referred, the Roman god of love, who is, okay, referred as the that busy archer. Okay, that busy archer here refers to the Greek god called Cupid, who is the god of love. I mean, that god of love has thrown the arrows, okay, at him, and therefore the moon, okay, is moon looks very pale, moon looks very sad, moon looks very unhappy, and therefore the moon obviously stands alone in the night sky. Okay, and so apart from the stars by its say, let us say, relative size. For example, as far as the size of the moon is concerned in the sky, it appears to be bigger than the stars, okay, that appear in the sky. So therefore moon stands alone by that way. Okay, by that way moon is completely alone, and it becomes a symbol of the solitary lover. Okay, look at the images used by the poet deliberately. So the image of the moon is presented over here as a lonely speaker or as a lonely lover. Okay, solitary lover. Solitary means lonely. Solitary lover who is suffering from some unrequited love. Unrequited love, as I said earlier, this poem is a part of Astrophel and Stella, which is a sonnet sequence by Sir Philip Sidney, and it deals with the basic theme of unrequited love. Unrequited love here refers to the speaker or the lover does not get love in return. So reciprocal, you might have heard Sonali this word being a science student. So reciprocal, okay, kind of a thing. So it has not, okay, no, the speaker does not get that love in return. So here the speaker or the poet goes on to assert that, okay, the moon, if it has been long with love acquainted, it is fit, okay, judge of love by that way. So the speaker feels that he has been in love, okay, with this lady, but this lady does not return his love to him. Okay, so what is the understanding of the first, okay, line? In the very first line, the speaker says that, okay, or if you, okay, take into consideration the whole octave at the beginning part of the poem, it uses a typical lyrical voice of the uh, say the moon, and it starts by describing how moon arises in the sky at night. Okay, look, just look at the octave, total octave, and then we'll study the poem line by line. So the octave here depicts the no, lyrical voices, a perception of the moon, how the speaker perceive, how the speaker understands, okay, the rising of the moon in the sky. So the it personifies the moon, how it is being personified. Oh moon, oh moon, I mean, this is a when do you call somebody by, okay, his name, or by, okay, by making use of some typical words, the person who is talking to you, or that person maybe, or let us say a human being. Oh no, so that is a personification. And here the speaker, or the lyrical voice that is being, okay, no, addressed, okay, here, the speaker projects his own sorrows in the moon. This is very important aspect. The moon is not unhappy actually, you know. The speaker who expresses his ideas and feelings, that speaker is actually expressing his sorrows, okay, in the moon. For example, with how sad steps, with how van face. So repetition of these words called how, you know, how. So it emphasizes the lyrical voice's attention, okay, to the object that he is describing. And what is the object that lyrical voice is describing? The moon is an object actually, who is described by the lyrical voice. Lyrical voice here refers to the speaker of the poem. Now speaker, remember, when you read any of the poem, the okay, the poet communicates his basic ideas, or his basic let us say his feelings or emotions through one lyrical voice, and that one lyrical voice is called here as the speaker. So the poet does not express his feelings and emotions directly. He puts somebody in between, okay, the reader and himself. And that person who stands in between the reader and the speaker, I'm sorry, reader and the poet, that person in poem is called as the speaker. Okay, so henceforth we will call this person, this persona, as a speaker of the poem. And the speaker is also used as lyrical voice. Okay, there are different names which are given to the lyrical voice. So the speaker actually emphasizes the object, okay, that he is describing. And what is the object of description? Moon is then is an object of the description. And this lyrical voice questions about this object's sadness, that is moon's sadness, and figures that it must be because of what may be that even in, okay, heavenly place, you know, usually moon is being called as the, okay, very pleasant object, very pleasant, uh, let us say, no, very pleasant place. No, moon is usually described in every culture, in Indian culture too, or in Western culture too, or in every culture of this world. Moon is usually described as an object of love. Chandra hai Sakshila, in Marathi you may have, okay, heard these lines, you know. So he is usually called as the object of beauty. Moon is usually called as an full moon, okay, a moon in full moon, during full moon night. This moon is usually called as the heavenly place or a beautiful say, but he is say wounded by the archer, okay, by his sharp arrows, okay, which tried by the Cupid. The Cupid here refers to the god of love in Greek mythology. So, as far as this whole octave is concerned, it is the speaker's connection, let us say, of his feelings to those of the moon. It is an example of a pathetic fallacy, okay, where the okay elements of nature appear to be to have human emotions. That is also okay. As I told earlier, at the end part of this poem, we will study that what is that pathetic fallacy. So it is also called as the personification on the part of the poet. So the here the lyrical wise actually suggests that the moon is struggling with its sentimental problem. The way speaker is actually struggling with its sentimental problem, and he is projecting his sentimental problem, okay, with the moon. So he, as he can see them from experiencing them, okay, himself. Actually the speaker is suffering from okay certain sad kind of feelings because his love is not accepted by the lady, and therefore this poem's basic theme is unrequited love. So this long with okay acquainted eyes can judge. Okay, I will okay explain this point afterwards. Okay, let us see the poem okay line by line. So um, uh, if you see okay the first line of the poem, okay, or if you compare the first octave and sestet, okay, the first 8 lines octave, it focuses on the lunar realm, that is moon. Okay, the speaker is identifying with the moon and that of mythology, especially specifically the Cupid, who is the Roman god of passion and desire and okay affection. And the last of the following 6 lines, that is sestet, they are basically rhetorical questions asked by the speaker in an attempt to understand his own inner feelings. Okay, if you see the octave here, this in octave, that is the first part of the poem, the speaker identifies himself with the moon, and therefore he says that okay, the way I am suffering from my okay feelings of love, I mean unrequited feelings of love in okay, and the way this Roman god of passion and desire, that is Cupid, has thrown arrows at him and he has become say wounded. Okay, and okay, the movement of the moon in the sky, they are described with minute details by the speaker in the octave part of the poem. And the sestet, that is the next 6 lines, which are actually basically the rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions, that means the answer is implied in the question itself. Okay, that is called as the rhetorical question. So the he asks so many rhetorical questions in the second sestet of the second part of the poem, that is sestet, in order to understand his own inner feelings. So the personification of the moon, that is known as pathetic fallacy 2, it is a device where an inanimate object is given human attributes, feelings, and responses. Okay, these 3 things you need to understand while understanding any of the poem. Okay, especially this particular poem, which is by okay uh, Sir Philip Sidney. And if you see at the very end part of the poem, Astrophel actually is represent here the speaker or the poet himself. So at the end part of this poem, the speaker or the poet, or let us say the astrophile, is left frustrated and in near despair because Stella has shunned, or Stella has not accepted his love. Okay, most aristocratic, okay, especially kind of a lady she seems to be, and especially most of the people in aristocratic family in during Elizabethan time, they would married for status. Okay, status was very important okay for them, and left okay the speaker actually this the I mean the beloved in the poem left the speaker asking questions. There really is no answer to those questions. So the only triumph, okay, is Sydney's recreation of a wonderfully, okay, crafted kind of a sonnet. Okay, let us see the poem line by line. I think this is, okay, all about the general descriptions which I just wanted to mention. So the line number one, it deals with, okay, the pathetic fallacy starts here itself. This personification of the moon as it rises with sad steps. Okay, this is what the speaker perceives, okay, the moon. He is addressing the moon directly using thou. Thou means you, which is the Elizabethan for you. Okay, thou means you, Elizabethan you, that is called here as thou. Sonali, can you hear me? Ashwini, Ashwini, can you hear me? Sonali has left, I think. Hello, Ashwini. Hello, Ashwini. Can you hear me, Ashwini?
हाँ.
Sonali
Yes
has
sir.
left. Sonali has left, I think. What has happened?
Network problem असन.
Okay, okay. So do you understand? Okay, what? Do you listen to me properly?
Yes sir.
Okay. So let us see the poem proper I have been dealing with. Fine. So the pathetic fallacy of the poem starts over here only, where the speaker actually is addressing his love feelings. Actually, they are not the moon's feelings; they are his own feelings, and therefore this poet calls this moon taking a very sad steps, and he is addressing, okay, the moon as, okay, thou, okay, that is you for, okay, in Elizabethan English. So now note the unusual use of the word how, okay, with how sad steps. Okay, it could be ungrammatical, yet seems to be, okay, appeal to our, okay, modern mind. So we are often saying how sad, how cool is that, how now, etc. And especially the word likes, the word climbs, okay, it refers to the climbist. So the poet actually uses this particular word, no, climb, climb, then apostrophe est. It deliberately it is used for the iambic pentameter, to maintain the iambic pentameter, okay, in the poem. Okay, therefore the poet has deliberately used, okay, this particular aspect. Understand the first line? Let us see the line number two. So the personification in this part of the poem also, in this section, in the second line also continues. It is actually repeated observation. How sad, how silently, how wan, pale, etc. The speaker is identifying, okay, with and sympathetic to the state of the moon. Actually, the speaker, okay, let us say, is not actually, I mean, the moon is not actually unhappy. The speaker is unhappy. You know, the speaker is unhappy, and okay, it is trying to represent his or her unhappiness through the moon. Okay, through the moon. Just a minute. Let me plug this by. Sonali, can you hear me properly now? I
Yes,
think.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I think you had faced one network problem and you left the meeting in between. Just a minute. Okay, so in the second part of the poem, also the poet or the speaker is actually expressing his feelings of love, or his feelings of, say, let us say his sad feelings, especially for this lady, because this lady has not accepted the love of the speaker, and therefore the speaker feels, okay, that the moon is very unhappy and all. Okay, so the speaker is identifying with and sympathy towards the state of the moon. So uh, it is not actually okay done thing surely, especially for a male to relate so strongly to the moon, such a symbol of okay all things, especially in feminine mythology and folklore. So Astrophel in this particular poem, that is the poet himself, okay, has lost touch with his own senses, and okay, he has therefore he has personified moon. Okay, it is also linked okay to okay emotional turmoil. So I mean the object which is used by the poet for to express his own feelings of love, that is quite apt and suitable one, okay, in the context of the poem. So it takes one to know one. Okay, the old saying goes, here are two locked in some sort of melancholy. The moon is there and the speaker is there. So the moon actually usually is the forever prisoner of the earth, vice versa. Usually uh, in literature also you may come across these kinds of okay proverbs. Moon is actually what it is called as चंद्र हा पृथ्वीचा उपग्रह आहे आणि तो कायम पृथ्वीच्या कक्षेभोवतीच तो पृथ्वीच्या कक्षेमध्येच तो फिरत असतो. एका अर्थानं तो पृथ्वीचा स्लेव आहे असंही म्हटलं जातं बघा आता या अर्थानं, इफ यू सी ओके द प्रॉपर. And okay, there are some poets, there are certain poets, they might have used or they have used actually this particular symbol deliberately, who is actually, I mean the lover actually here is nothing but the moon, and the beloved is nothing but the earth, and this lever is revolving and revolving around and around the moon, sorry, around the earth, but the earth is not paying any kind of attention towards the moon. That is also kind of a symbol deliberately used by the poet, okay, in this particular poem. So the moon is usually okay the prisoner of the earth and vice versa. So gravity and okay these orbit and these things are okay are of immaterial for the poets, okay, to follow. So these by making use of these okay say these first two lines, or let us say uh, hello Ashwini, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sonali once again has left, okay, it may be her problem.
काहीतरी तिला फोन येत असतील नाहीतर.
Okay. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbs the sky. That is the first line. So the speaker of the poem is addressing this okay moon, okay, as what problem he has been okay facing. So how silently and with how wan a face, okay, what made be that even in heavenly place that busy archer his sharp arrows tries. So what might be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries. So that busy archer, as I said earlier, that busy archer in this poem refers to the Cupid, the Roman god of love, and he is throwing arrows at the speaker. That busy archer. Okay, this is a reference to the Greek god. You can note down this Greek name of the Greek god. The name of Greek god is क्युपिड, CUPID, द ग्रीक गॉड ऑफ लव. तसं आपल्याकडे प्रत्येक याची देवता असं, जसे की विद्येची देवता सरस्वती मानली जाते किंवा गणेशाला आपण विद्येची देवता मानतो, तसा ग्रीक मिथॉलॉजीमध्ये सुद्धा वेगवेगळ्या देवता आहेत आणि त्याच्यामध्ये प्रेमाची देवता ही युजली इट इज the Greek god called Cupid. So accordingly, okay, you should understand. We only 10 minutes are left. Okay, doesn't matter. So what exactly the speaker wants to suggest here is that uh, the personification, as I said earlier, it continues in this section of the okay poem. So now these two lines, okay, line number 3 and line number 4, these two are a pair. This is called as the run-on line technique used by the poet. Okay, the sense of the second line, third line carries into the fourth line. That is also called as enjambment. Okay, I will explain these points afterwards. Now let us see only the meaning of the poem. So the speaker suggests that even in the lunar sphere in heaven, that is Cupid, who is called as the Roman god of desire, affection, love, etc. He fires his arrows, okay, into the people's heart, making them fall in love or in lust, more to the point. So what exactly the speaker says idea is that the feelings of love which come into my mind or which come into the moon's mind, let us say it is only because of the Cupid, god of love, god of desire, god of affection, or let us say god of lust. The speaker is very much okay, sure about it. And therefore, actually what exactly the speaker is talking about, or the astrophile is the speaker of this poem. So astrophile is actually relating his own experiences of love on the earthly plane and see, okay, he sees mirrored exactly the same result. What is that? What are the same results? The sadness, the silence, the paleness, the unhappiness, especially with the moon. The moon is not unhappy, the moon is not pale, the moon is not sad, the moon is not in standing silence. Moon is there in the sky as it is, and it does not okay, make hurried steps. Usually if you observe the moon, okay, you may feel that, okay, does it follow the hurried steps? No, it takes its usual time, as per, okay, no, if you follow the science, then okay, you will be able to understand it proper. But the speaker says that today, when I looked at the moon, okay, it looks very pale, it looks very sad, it looks very silent. Actually the moon is not silent, the moon is not, okay, pale, the moon is not sad, it is not unhappy. It is the speaker, that is the let us say astrophile himself, is very sad. So the Greeks associated, okay, the moon with such allied say gods as, Selene. These are certain names of the Greek gods, say Hecate, Artemis, etc. you know uh, Especially you might have heard these names: Dinah, Luna. These are all, okay, females. Okay, and okay, Greek elite gods like Selene, Artemis, Hecate. Okay, we will explain these points afterwards. But no, these again and again come into, okay, especially in, okay, English poetry, because most of the English poets follow the Greek mythology, okay, while writing, especially in Elizabethan poetry too. So in Sydney's time, the moon was related to virginity. थोडक्यात एलिझाबेथन एज मध्ये चंद्र जो आहे, किंवा ओके, द मून इज युजली रेफर्ड ॲज, okay, the symbol of virginity. Okay, emotions which are seen as an influence, okay, on behavior. So uh, what exactly the poet wants to suggest in these first, okay, second two lines? The second two lines, the speaker of the poem suggests that, okay, the moon looks to be very sad, moon looks to be very pale, it looks to be very sick, because he's suffering from the love for his beloved called Stella. The Stella is not listening to the god, that is moon, and therefore it looks sad. Okay, and it is actually wounded by the arrows shot at him by the god, okay, Cupid, the goddess of, or the god of love. Okay, understand first four lines, that is first quatrain. Is there any problem which, okay, you face in understanding the first quatrain?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us see the next quatrain of the poem. So sure, if that long with long acquainted eyes, what does the poet say? Sure, there is a comma. If that long with long acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feels a lover's case. Sure, if that long with long acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feelst a lover's case. I read it in thy looks, thy languished grace. to me that feel the like that thy state descries. Deliberate use of archaic words in the poem. Sydney also continues in this section of the poem. The second quatrain of the first octave, okay, of the poem, where the speaker says sure. The speaker is very much sure. Therefore, he begins the line with the word called sure. Sure. If that long with long acquainted eyes. So with long acquainted eyes, what does it refer to? Then can judge of love, thou feels a lover's case. So who can judge your love feelings? Okay, especially for that, okay, woman, I read it in thy looks. I can see them directly into your eyes. I can read them in your eyes. Thy languished grace. Okay, to me, तुझं जे काय मानसिक स्थिती जी आहे ती मी चांगल्या पद्धतीने समजू शकतो बिकॉज आय एम अ फेलो ओके वी आर द फेलो ट्रॅव्हलर वी नो आय नो okay what kind of feelings you might have been okay going okay undergoing okay during this particular time. So the speaker actually is trying to express let us say no uh, the love feelings in the mind of the moon. Actually the love feelings there are in the mind of the speaker, but he's trying to project those love feelings through the moon. So line number 5, 6, 7 and 8, let us say the second quatrain of the first octave, it okay, it works together. You know, the speaker is basically saying that if the moon with its long association, okay, with its long association say with romance and let us say mood change and mystery, is able to judge of love, means what? As I said earlier, okay, if you see it in a different context altogether, if you see earth as a beloved and okay the moon as the lover, so this lover, that is moon, has a long standing experience of love, you know. So the love, the moon with its long association with romance and okay this mood of okay of love, okay, especially this mystery, is able to judge of love, then it must also have feelings when it comes to a, you know, a specific lover. That means moon is a, let us say moon is a perfect judge of love. Moon is the perfect judge of love. This is what the speaker actually wants to suggest, that he himself is the perfect judge of love because he has been running after this lady, who has been convincing this lady for a very, very long period of time. Okay, that is the first, okay, the understanding of the first line. So the speaker here actually knows this from, especially from the observation of the moon. He sees, okay, that the speakers, this is the matter of observation. He sees that it carries, you know, the symptoms of love sickness, okay, like him, that is, let us say the languished grace which the state of the moon shows all too well. I mean, this is actually the description of the moon by the speaker. Okay, how, okay, his languished grace, languished on grace. What does it mean, languished grace? Let me see. Grace, grace here refers to, okay, elegance and beauty of movement or expression, you know, that is called as a grace, you know. So beauty of the moon, moon especially stands for beauty in all cultures, as I said earlier. So the speaker knows, okay, no, the feelings of love in the mind of the moon, especially for his beloved, that is earth. Okay, in modern context you can call it as. So he sees